Welcome to the In Good Company podcast. This is a space for real conversations about leadership, business, and the moments that shape us along the way. I'm your host, Ginger Jones, and through my work, I've had the privilege of sitting in rooms with thoughtful leaders, founders, and executives who care deeply about how they grow, how they lead, and how they show up. This podcast is an extension of those rooms. We'll share honest stories, meaningful insights, and conversations that will help you think a little differently about the mile you're in and the one that's ahead. Thanks so much for being here. Let's get started. Okay, cool. Well, we're going to get started. Hey,
all right.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, you bet.
I'm so excited. You've been a good, ever since the first time we met. I think you and I just figured out we had a lot in common from our backgrounds and definitely share a lot of the same values. So will you tell everybody a little bit about like your background and what you're doing now?
Yeah, you want the long or the short version?
We'll take the long.
The long version?
Yeah.
Wow, that could be long. So, basically I started out in nonprofit. That was my first foray into the workplace, and I really enjoyed it, but kind of quickly figured out that I felt like I needed more, so I went back and got an MBA. Mm-hmm. And that put me on a track to get into the business world. When I was getting my MBA, I saw it as an opportunity to try a bunch of different hats on, So one of the things I did in addition to the classes was I made sure to have a bunch of internships. I knew I was interested in marketing, but I wanted to see what market research looked like versus product management. So I worked for Vision, I worked for Georgia Pacific, and I worked for Hitachi Telecom.
Okay.
Ultimately ended up getting a brand management job with Georgia Pacific, and that really started my career. And spent a bunch of years in corporate marketing. Finally moved here to Nashville to get a job with Fruit of the Loom up in Bowling Green.
Yeah.
And ended up with them as a VP of marketing on their wholesale division. We went through bankruptcy, and basically there was a big layoff, and that's when the entrepreneurial spirit took over, because I didn't ever want to get laid off again.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about buying or starting a business, it's almost like a reset button in a way, where you get an opportunity to reflect. What do I like? What don't I like? I saw it as an opportunity where I could recreate myself if I wanted to.
Yeah.
And tried looking at a couple of different business models, and finally tutoring just felt right to me. Always had a heart for education, was always a camp counselor. That was kind of my favorite job in high school. And ultimately, I ended up buying a franchise of Huntington Learning Center and starting it up in Hendersonville. So that was interesting. Nobody had ever heard of the brand in town.
Wow. So like what year was this?
That would have been 2003 that I started talking to them. 2004 is when I opened my doors.
Okay. And you ended up owning how many?
Over time, I ended up owning 6.
Wow.
But never more than 4 at the same time.
Okay.
But they were all in different states, so that was a whole other thing.
I know. I have so many questions.
Yeah, you learn a lot. You learn number one, just dealing with different landlords is a whole different experience. And then different labor departments, different revenue departments of all the different states. It gets to be a challenge.
I had 10 locations in different spots. It was also different, even in Tennessee, just different clientele.
Yes.
And from one place to another. So I imagine for you, what were the states you were in?
I was in Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, Florida, Alabama, and here in Tennessee.
Wow. Okay.
Never had 2 in the same state.
Wow. So, I could go so many places. Let's talk about what you're doing now, and then we'll go back there.
Sure.
And maybe the whole journey story.
Yeah, I bought that business. Like I said, that was back in 2004. My sons were 6 and 8, and I wanted a lifestyle business. I wanted something where if I needed to knock off and go to a soccer game, I would do that. So I ran the center for a number of years and got to know all the families and really enjoyed that. But then over time, I saw opportunity and started buying existing centers and was turning them around. And flash forward a number of years, and all of a sudden I took a look, and I was really far away from what had originally attracted me to the business. And the next thing you know, I'm basically an operations manager, which has its own appeals. And I spent a lot of years focused on my employees and really trying to develop them. And so that same spirit that I had for the kids, I just transposed it onto my employees. And eventually I got to the point where it felt like I was just punching a clock, you know? I wasn't getting that sense of fulfillment that I had gotten seeing the kids succeed directly. And so I knew the time had come. It was a little over 20 years.
Wow.
And I met a guy that I really got to know and like in our Huntington system. And we became business partners and started up a marketing consulting firm about 2 years ago. And now we've expanded that beyond marketing, and we're helping with marketing, sales, and operations.
Okay.
And thoroughly enjoying that work.
That's awesome.
Yeah, tons of fun.
And so what, did you sell your centers?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you sell them all to the same buyer?
No, sold them one at a time.
Okay.
It's interesting when you own a franchise, you're not the only one who owns it.
Right. Oh, yeah.
You know, and so I had to abide by the franchisors' preferences and their regulations, and then I would bring them candidates, and some candidates didn't pass muster.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different process.
Yeah. So I want to dive into the Huntington because I feel like that's where a lot of our stories kind of align, but also what you had to learn about trust and delegation and leadership. Like, tell me about that.
Yeah, you know, I think trust is basically the fundamental underpinning of all of that, and it's trust your employees, but it's also trust yourself. Like I said, I ran my first center for 10 years, and so I always joke around. I was chief cook and bottle washer. That was my job to make sure everything functioned. And when it came to that time that I knew I couldn't keep doing that anymore, it took a bit of soul searching to really come to realize I may be able to hire somebody who can actually do it better than I can do it. And I need to trust that that can happen. But I also need to realize that they aren't just going to magically be able to do that.
Right.
That I've got to set them up for success. And, you know, it's a whole different skill set. It really is.
Did you have models for that in your corporate gig? Like, did you feel like you had models of delegation and leadership when in your corporate world that taught you about that? Or?
Not to the extent that I needed for this business. You know, I was in a functional silo in the companies I had worked for before. So I was a marketing person and I had marketing people that reported to me. Well, now I'm a small business owner. And so I've got somebody who's head of my teachers. I've got somebody who is responsible for selling the product to the parents coming in the door. There's an operational aspect to it. So it's a lot of different hats.
Right.
And a lot of different levels.
Right.
Some of the people I relied on the most heavily were part-time employees. And so not only am I training them and trying to build them up, but at the same time, I have to be realistic about how much of their day, their week, their month I represent.
Yeah. Did you have a lot of turnover in like from a tutor standpoint?
It was interesting. If you split the business right down the middle, half my tutors were with me forever.
Oh, wow.
And the other half would churn about every 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So how many people did you employ over the years, do you know?
At the highest, I had 4 centers simultaneously, and I had about 80 employees total.
But over 20 years, you probably employed thousands of people, right?
Yeah, a lot of people.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what are some lessons that you took from corporate to small business ownership? What do you think were some of the valuable things?
I definitely learned a lot about recognition that came from corporate. I don't know that I would have known the value of recognition the way that I did because I observed it and experienced it. So that was definitely part. And then I think probably the most important thing was empowerment and just, and you know this, you give people the tools, you inspect every once in a while to make sure you're getting what you expect, but otherwise you bring in professional people who know what they're doing, you train them, and then you let them do their job.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, my managers had really good length of stay with me. So I barely had any turnover in management. Tutors, the average tutor's working 6 hours a week.
Right.
So I wasn't a meaningful part of their lives necessarily.
But that's still it's such a heavy lift as an owner and operator to, even though right, that like I had a friend that owned adult caregivers. He owned an adult caregiving business, and it was just the churn all the time. And so even though it's still like a huge part of your business and your time.
Yeah, it's funny now looking back on it. I'm 2 years past that, and that is the weight that's off my shoulders. Probably more than anything is just that concern about keeping a good, healthy staff, making sure everybody's up to speed and trained. And then, of course, whenever you add people, you add all their stories and everything that's going on in their house and with their families. And, you multiply that out by couple of dozen folks, it gets to be a lot.
It's a lot, yeah. And it's always, I feel like in the service-based business too, what I felt, I'm sure you did when I talk to people, it's like, my thing was, do I have therapists that I'm paying a salary that aren't seeing patients, or do I have hundreds of kids sitting on a waiting list, and it was that dance all the time. So did you have that same experience?
Absolutely. That is a constant. And quite honestly, I'm kind of laughing because I'm thinking about two of my clients that are going through the exact same thing, and they're in very different industries.
Yeah.
That, as a business owner, that is one of the constant battles. You want to hire great people, but then you need to keep them busy.
Right.
And you also don't want to disappoint your clients and not have the amount of folks there to service them.
Yeah, I would think, well, I don't want doctors to think we're full because they'll stop referring, and they would have, so I kind of always chose to, once you have a certain level of cash reserves, you can kind of say, well, I can take a hit and just pay somebody whose schedule isn't full. And then that ended up being, we grew a lot that way, but that was not easy to do. It's like, you're trying to find people that it's like, can you only work 5 hours a week and only take the pay for that? So tell me about, was there any connection between, because you had that marketing background, and when you said, well, I like students because I was camp counselor, was there anything from marketing that translated to Huntington? Like, were you interested in how they marketed as a brand? Or?
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, I served on the ad fund board for, 8 years.
For Huntington?
For Huntington.
Oh, wow.
So the way it was structured, we would collect 2% of everyone's gross revenue on a monthly basis, and it would go into a fund.
Oh, cool.
And it was about $4 million, somewhere in that range. And there were 5 franchisor representatives and then 5 franchisee representatives who would determine how those dollars got spent. So
cool.
I was deeply ingrained in Huntington marketing. And what was funny, I was on the ad fund board during COVID. So we had to really quickly shift gears, and all of a sudden we're doing remote tutoring, which we weren't doing that before.
Right, centers,
So we had to make some major changes, and Ann Huntington, who had taken over the company, got basically thrown in at that point. And between the ad fund board and Ann, we were meeting more than once a week, where the ad fund board typically would meet on a quarterly basis.
Oh, wow.
And talk at a high level about a budget.
Yeah.
We were meeting multiple times a week just to try to help keep the ship afloat.
Yeah.
Marketing has never left me. No matter what my other interests are, marketing is my fundamental interest. So I found ways to flex that muscle within my business and then through the ad fund.
Was there anything, when you talk about like owning your own business, because now you've been doing that for 22 years? Would that be right? 23 years.
Yeah.
What has surprised you about yourself?
About myself as a business owner or as a human being?
Let's say both.
Okay. I think as a business owner, I am continually surprised by how emotionally connected I get to people. And to an extent, it doesn't surprise me as much with my employees, but with my clients. I immediately when I start working with a new client, I feel like I actually work in their location, and I take their business really seriously, which I guess is a good thing.
That's a really good thing. Yeah.
But sometimes it feels like I need to take a step back and try to be a little more objective. But as a person, this. Owning a business is a unique challenge to your psyche, because it's terrific when everything's going well, and everything isn't always going well. And one thing in particular that I found, and I would imagine you found it with 10 locations, you're constantly answering questions, right? It's all day, every day, decision. And as much as you try to push that down, there are decisions that have to be made that your employees can't, and sometimes they're just not even aware that decision needs to be made. So I guess I kind of discovered in myself that I need a minute. There are times in the day or in the week. And that's the great thing about Next Mile, quite honestly. I think that's why I enjoy it so much, because sometimes you just need a minute.
Like for you, yeah.
Okay, I'm not making a decision. I need a minute of zen.
Yeah.
Kind of get my head focused again, and then I'll jump back in.
Yeah, It's funny. I haven't thought about the fact that I said this. I grew up watching my parents like serve in church all the time. Like my mom would do the nursery, my dad was handing out bulletins, and so when we had a family, and we're going to church. I was, they'd say like, if you want to volunteer, and I thought, I just can't volunteer at church. And I remember when it hit me, like, this is the hour I need to be led. Like I'm leading so many people and I'm on board. That's what church was for me and is still. It's like I'm not up on stage like communicating what's happening, and it's very important that we do that for ourselves.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. What about, so I love you, like you got so much experience, like you got corporate, you got franchise ownership, you got starting your own thing. Tell me, like, what do you see, like, where good, the bad of all of those? Because I think franchise ownership is for some people. I could see it's not for everybody. Obviously, being an entrepreneur is not for everybody. Like, what do you see as the...
Well, I got into franchising specifically. I went in with my eyes open. Mm-hmm. I had looked at a couple of business models prior to that. By the time I got to a business broker, I kind of felt like they're, at least the ones that I looked at, somebody was basically selling me their problem. They couldn't fix their problem. And so they were, and it's a variety of reasons why people sell their businesses, and a lot of them are very successful. And I will say also, I think in 2026, it's a little different than it was in 2004. I think people are more savvy about getting a business ready to sell, and and some people start a business with that thought in mind. Mm-hmm. When I was looking, it was people just pulling the parachute. They were just ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Well, you get a great deal.
Well, you could get a great deal.
Hopefully, yeah.
But what I found with the ones that I was looking at is they were so focused on that owner that I felt like when that owner is gone, so is the business. Mm-hmm. And when I looked at franchising, I thought, all right, it's a model. They give you a book, and you just kind of play by the book, and it's been proven in other markets. So if they can do it, I can do it. So I felt really good going into it that it was an established plan. So I didn't have to worry about how do I tutor a child?
Yeah.
What curriculum do I choose for that child? All those components were done. Yeah. So all I had to do was come in and be a business owner and a marketer and build it from that perspective. That was great. Mm-hmm. There's an interesting point in franchising from my perspective where you now know a lot. You're now a franchisee who's done this for a while. Mm-hmm. And I think franchisors struggle with that a little bit. It's if you look at the way that people progress through the system, you get a bunch of people that enter the system, and a number of them are instantly successful. They buy into everything. And then you got some who are a little bit more recalcitrant, and maybe they're not, they don't completely buy in. They're not as successful. That requires a lot of the franchisors' focus. But over time, you end up with kind of the old timers. And at the end of the day, I was in the system more than 20 years. Yeah. I was an old timer. Now you've got things like convention and sales meetings and those types of things. And literally, I would go to just have social time with the people that I knew really well. Yeah. And yet the franchisor is still trying to kind of educate us, and so it makes it difficult, I think, on both sides of that equation. I understand their challenge because they're trying to continually offer the remedial level instruction for the newer people need, and yet satisfy the folks who've been around for a long time. And then the ones who have been around feel some commitment to the system, like I've got to be there to help out. But after a while, you're doing a lot of that. Oh yeah. So it's just kind of interesting. Now as an independent business owner with no overlord, no one that I answer to, all that pressure is off of me as well. Right. But this is also different, and something if somebody is considering a franchise they should think about. I had a convention to go to. I had people. Right. I have friends still in the Huntington system, and I could call them up and we could bounce ideas off of each other. As an independent business owner, if you find a next mile, you're in great shape. If you don't find one, it can be pretty lonely.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I didn't even think about that being part of your experience too.
One of the stories I tell, and in the book that I wrote, I tell this story too. When you're first starting your business, you've got all kinds of advocates working with you. You got your attorney, your accountant, and everybody's helping you out. And you've got some early marketing contacts that you've made of digital and social, and you get all that stuff up and running. And then the day you open your door, You're the one who walks through the door. Nobody's coming through with you.
Right.
And I remember walking into my brand spanking new Huntington Learning Center, and I looked around and I thought, there isn't a kid in here.
Like,
There's
and I
not
gotta
a
pay the
child
rent. Yeah.
in this building. And it's on me.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of similar to when I had my first child.
Yeah.
And I looked down and I was like, oh, now I'm in charge.
I know. I still think vividly about when I signed my first lease, and I left there, and it was so cheap because I like subleased from somebody, you know. But and my brain automatically went to, well, if this never works, I still make, I don't even remember what my paycheck was at Vanderbilt. I think it was like $3,000 a month. I still make $3,000, and then going, I don't have a job anymore. You know, like, it's because my brain had kind of been in that worst case scenario the whole time. And then it was like, no, like I just totally jumped out of the plane. And so, no, I get that.
Scary moment.
It is scary.
And those leases don't help because they're scary just on their face.
I know. But also so defining, right? To like what you find out you're made of. And, yeah.
Well, I don't know about you. I took an SBA loan too when I started my business.
I never did. Sometimes I wish, I've never taken anybody else's money, and I don't know that that's the smartest thing.
I don't know. I mean, hard to say one way or the other. I think you obviously made a good
and
go
an exit.
of it.
It's nice not to owe anybody money.
The SBA loan for me, because of all the early franchise fees and everything else, was there was no way I was going to make that big of an investment. And the SBA, for anyone who's interested, it's very favorable loan. And I will say, very shortly after I started my business, I never thought about the loan payment. It just wasn't anything that kept me up at night. And I had it paid off in something like 8 years, I think it might have been. So
I think it's super. I mean, sometimes Mark and I have these talks all the time, like, you know, the term other people's money. Like, we just always, I don't know if it was pride or not even knowing what the resources were. It's just like, let's figure this out. We've talked about doing some other things, and I was like, let's not use our own money. You know,
well, my wife's a banker, so I've had that in my ear. You know, if you can put your capital to work somewhere else and do better, and you can get cheap money, you know, why not do it?
Yeah, totally.
Especially when you know you could pay it back anytime you want.
Yeah. If the terms are favorable. Okay, well, let's talk about your book, because I have that written down that we need to talk about. Tell me, because I'm sure you and I talked about this before, but I don't remember, like, your interest in Gen Z and where that kind of came from, and what are you thinking about that now? Because now, when you were diving in, it wasn't as big a topic as it is now. So
I still pay a lot of attention to it. I mean, basically, my interest came, if you look at the time that I owned Huntington. You know, when I first started in the business, Gen Z, the oldest Gen Zer, was a second grader.
Oh, okay.
So basically, they were my kids.
They were your kids, yeah.
And I got to know them, and over time, when they were starting to get into high school and thinking about college, and, you know, even one of my sons is a Gen Zer. So we have conversations about these kinds of things all the time. And, you know, I guess I've become kind of interested in the whole generational concept, because I know a lot of people my age who are just sort of stuck in their way of thinking. And the idea is, well, surely everyone else should think the way that I think. Well, when I look at these kids and how they've grown up and the things that they've seen, you know, the economic downturn in 08, 09, and seeing their parents just arbitrarily get laid off.
Yeah.
And then COVID and the world shuts down, and, you know, all the technological improvements that have happened, you know, with phones and internet and obviously now AI, their view of the world's very different. And the thing is, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong.
Right.
And I try very, very hard to listen to them. You know, for instance, working is a good example. And it's probably the same for you. When I first started working, you worked. I got in before my boss. I tried to leave after my boss. Took very short lunch breaks. You know, I wanted to prove what I was able to do. Gen Zers don't, in general, feel that way.
Yeah.
Is that wrong? I mean, in a way, I wouldn't say I wasted my youth, but I spent a lot of my youth in a cubicle.
Hustling,
when I could have been spending kind of a little bit more balanced time doing other things.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're necessarily wrong about that. One thing I am becoming a little bit more concerned about, though, is their attitude towards savings.
Because like AI, like the recent stuff that...
Well, you know, a little bit of kind of live for today type of attitude about money, and that concerns me.
When they could like live the longest. I know
Right.
that's what's kind of fascinating to me is like I think this with like the models for retirement and all that. It's like we really now think that if we take care of ourselves and like living to 100 or 120, I don't think it's going to be that far-fetched anymore. And I just think, I know when we see like our wealth manager and there's the chart, it doesn't have marker.
It doesn't end there.
We're not living past 100 on those charts, And
I just went to my wife's grandmother's 100th birthday over the weekend.
Oh, really?
Coincidentally.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so special.
Yeah, it's amazing.
How's she doing? Is she like?
She's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
mean, 100's, that's a long
I
road.
know. And I think before we were like, well, nobody wants to live that long, right? Because we watched our grandparents like not feel well in their late 70s or early 80s, but I just don't know that that's going to be the case. So anyway, not to get too far off topic, but I think it's interesting because it's like this younger generation really could live a long time.
And that's kind of the point that I was trying to make there is that, it's great to have a balance in your life. It's great to make enough money to enjoy what you're doing. I'm fine with all of that. But I don't know that they see money right now the way that I do, which to me, it's an insurance policy.
Right.
You're young, everything's great, you're healthy, it's all terrific, but you should be securing something for in case there's some sort of a medical problem, in case you get married and have a special needs child potentially who's going to require extra support. You don't want to get hung up in that moment. So trying to create a little bit more awareness, I think, is another thing I'm interested in right now. But it fundamentally just comes from the fact that I've just gotten to know these kids, and I understand where they're coming from. I really do.
And I know when you presented at Next Mile, you're really passionate about like leaders and owners understanding where they're coming from.
Yeah.
So what's a mistake that you think that leaders and bosses make about this generation?
I think the biggest mistake is the idea that I'm going to keep doing it the way I've always done it, and they're going to have to learn to work the way that I want them to work. And probably the truest example of that right now, there's a lot of friction in the marketplace about you need to come to the office every day. And I understand it to an extent from an owner's perspective, but it's just not the way the world works anymore.
Right.
And there are so many tools available now to manage people remotely. And at the end of the day, I believe in paying people based on what they produce rather than just being in the office. Now, the flip side of that is, are you missing opportunities to stand around the water cooler, if there is one, and chat or have some visibility in FaceTime so that you are thought of when it comes time to promote someone? Yeah, I do believe that that's true. But I think by putting like an onerous rule in place that you must be in the office 40 hours a week creates unnecessary friction right now. I think there's a happy medium, and quite honestly, Gen Zers, at least in the most recent reports that I've seen, they don't want to be 100% remote.
Right.
They're not asking
That's
for
isolating,
that. They just want some sort of hybrid model. Where if they need to run some errands during the week, which gosh, we'd all like that.
Right.
They have the flexibility to go do that.
How do you think boundaries are different? What do you think Gen Z's boundaries are like?
They're a little bit more gig oriented, I think, than we were. My thinking was I'm going to go work for an employer and they're going to take care of me and I'm going to move up through that organization. And now I'm seeing Gen Zers thinking more in terms of I'm going to do this for you, but that may only take 20 hours a week. And so I'm going to do this for that person. And that's going to take 10. And what they're focused on is building themselves as a business rather than as an employee. And I kind of like that. It's that entrepreneurial spirit, and it's starting much earlier, which I don't think is a bad thing at all.
No, that's really cool. Do you think it lends itself to, when I think about my kids, I think how important it is. I mean, they're 15 and 10 now, but I'm really focused on them feeling like there's something bigger than them they're contributing to, right? So it's when they complain about the sports or whatever, I'm like, this is being part of a team, like those kind of things are, I think, important. Do you feel like maybe that's at risk if we're all running these like solopreneur lives?
I not only think it's at risk, I think it is kind of happening. I think there's a certain isolation that is happening right now where there's a false sense of connection because of social media, and that's not really true connection. What I think might happen, now we're getting into forecast land. What I think might happen is as they get older, we all change when we get older, I think once they start becoming older and more of them are thinking about families and things like that, that mindset is going to shift and a little bit more of the community mindset will come in.
Yeah.
I hope that ends up happening.
Sometimes I feel like the pendulum has to swing so far both ways, and we as a society and kind of like land in a good place that's healthy.
But you just look at the numbers right now in terms of anxiety, and it's rough. It's tough out there right now.
I know. Did you read The Anxious Generation? Your kids are older, but yeah, I mean that's a real.
It's true.
And how he quotes this a lot, but it's like how we became so protective of a life outside, like not sending our kids out to play or not letting our kids go to the grocery store, but then we just kind of let them have a free-for-all on a device where, they can talk to whoever and see whatever.
I read this thing a couple of years ago that this guy had started a park, I think it was in California, where he just threw saws and hammers and nails, the pieces of wood in the park, and would just let the kids come in and they could do whatever they wanted. I thought, okay, well, I get where you're going, but that might be a little bit too much.
Yeah, I know. It's a very interesting phenomenon, I think. I read a book called Free Range Parenting. It was really good. But when it changed.
Was it that lady who let her daughter ride the subway in New York?
Yes. Yeah. And like got flack for it. Yeah. But when she said that like less than 0.01% of kids are taken by somebody they don't know. And that really changed it for me. Like, okay, like, because it'd be, if I could just even, if my kid got one aisle over from me at the grocery store, I'd be like, oh my God, because we just think everybody was there to snatch up our kids. So, again, going off the technology talk a little bit, but it really, I think that changed it for me, of just like giving them some freedom and, and I think we're a very litigious society, which is where the playgrounds things came in. But anyway, let's go back to your, I guess, in your growth of like Huntington phase, but maybe even in your corporate, like you obviously did some things well with hiring and probably made some mistakes. So tell me some of those stories.
Well, I've clearly made mistakes because I hired one person and she was supposed to start 2 weeks later and just never came. Never called, never sent an email. I followed up.
Yeah.
Never heard anything. I've had other people that came to work and quit the first day. I mean, I've run the gamut on that.
And what do you think in those two situations? What do you think you missed? Like, what do you think?
Number one, it was 100% my fault, no doubt about it. Now, in each circumstance, it was a little different, but I would say really listening, setting expectations, and really listening to the other person. The one who didn't show up, I take a little less responsibility for that.
Are we sure they didn't die?
Well, you can never be sure.
Did you check the obits? Yeah.
Yeah, you can. That's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that. She was pretty young, so I hope that didn't happen, but I didn't think about that. But the one who came for the first day, it was clear to me that when she showed up, I hadn't done a great job of really explaining the job in detail to her. And she immediately became uncomfortable with the responsibility that she was about to take on. I needed to do more on the front end. But the thing is, when you're hiring people, you worry about that sometimes. It's like, well, how much do I, pull the curtain back here? Because I also want the person to want to be here. And that's a razor's edge conversation.
Oh, I was so proud of my company. And so I loved everything that, I had to get, it was like, just don't talk anymore. Because I would always say all the great things. It's like, well, of course they want to work here.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so I think it's hard because when and it's why people like me shouldn't be in the interviewing role. And for the last long bit of my company, I wasn't, because it was like, I'm not going to make the right. I see the best in people way too much, and I love this company so much that it's like, this is a no-win situation. But
well, it's interesting. I'm working with a client right now, and I've kind of stepped in a little bit in that role because I do have a lot of experience in that. And I told him, he's the CEO of the company, I said, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to vet these candidates to the point that by the time I send somebody to you, all you need to do is go out and have a cup of coffee, and if you enjoy the conversation, hire them.
Good, yeah, that's good.
That, to me, is appropriate for the CEO.
Right.
To really get that fit feel. But you're right. I mean, when you start getting into the logistics of the business, and the CEO is their own worst salesperson in a way. Because you're either going to make it sound terrible,
right,
or you're going to make it sound like,
depending on what kind of day you're
like
having.
harps play every day when you come into the office. And that's more me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't doing it intentionally.
Right.
It's just, I wasn't down in the rigor of the work every day.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, everything was rosy. And then she came in and she saw the wide variety of things that she was going to be responsible for, which were much more in detail than I had covered with her.
Yeah.
So
We ended up doing I don't remember, maybe the last 5 years, what we called a realistic job preview, and so people would come in for half a day.
Yeah.
And what I loved about that is we would put them with a therapist, and a lot of people just like wouldn't know that we were still kind of interviewing them.
Right.
So they would say things like, I can remember one time a girl was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this because I got to let my dog out. And it's like, well, of course we didn't offer her the job. Like,
Yeah.
This is a service-based healthcare company. Like, we need you to do something with your dog while you're at work. But that was something that really.
I did an interview just like that in my center in Ohio. I had 2 candidates, and I, for the life of me, could not decide.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I'll tell you what, I'll give each one of you 2-hour window. You come in, I'm not going to be there. You do whatever you want to do.
Oh, cool.
And then I had a couple little spies in the building that reported back. One of them went to all the file cabinets and started pulling students' files out and wanted to make sure that we had all the paperwork in place.
Yeah.
The other one immediately went out in the lobby, greeted herself, greeted the parents, ushered the kids back, talked to the teacher. So that was easy decision.
Yeah,
and she was terrific.
Yeah. So what were you, when you were looking for, so you had managers at your centers and then you had tutors. Was that kind of your 2 main roles?
Well, then there was an administrative person. So
okay.
you had a center director who was basically like the principal of a high school.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then we would have an administrator who made sure the kids were coming and going and being scheduled properly and all of that, and then the tutors. And usually I had a couple of head teachers that would help coordinate the tutors as well.
And what were the 1 to 2 big things you were looking for in somebody you'd hire?
For the center director?
Across the board, was there something that was the same in all of them, or?
I wanted them to love kids. That was really important. It's the type of job, it's mission driven, so I wanted to make sure that we were hiring people who really not just understood the mission, but obviously demonstrated and lived it. But I also wanted people who could put a business owner's hat on for a minute. It never ceased to amaze me how small my businesses were, that people would still act as if I was a huge corporation. And I don't know if you ever ran across
I totally did, yeah.
and
I'm
they're
like, I'm figuring this out as I go.
Yeah, they're like, well, I don't understand why I can't buy this $1,500 computer. I need it. It's like, well, maybe if we bring another student on, I might be able to do that, but I can't do it today. And just kind of getting that point across and helping them to understand. And again, that was my responsibility. I didn't necessarily need to show them the P&L of the business every day, but at least that sense of what it took to make the place operate.
Oh, like I feel like founders' kids or small business owners' kids were like the best employees. I was like, if your mom or dad ran a small business, then you're gonna get it. Yeah, there's just a lot of things you didn't have to say that they understood. What about your leadership has had to change over the years in just all of the different environments you've been in?
Yeah, I think that. When I first started out, I would tell people things, and now I've moved into more discussing things with people. And again, my job as a leader, my first and foremost job is to find the right people. If I've found the right people, I've learned you've got to trust them, you've got to value them. I had a meeting just today with my project manager, and she's super sharp. And so I don't want to sit there and just tell her what to do. And she's got a lot of her own experiences, and she does research on behalf of the company. So I want to hear her out. Ultimately, like we talked about, it's all about making decisions. Eventually, I'm going to have to make a decision. But I've learned to sort of slow down and not feel like I'm always the person in the room who knows the most, because I'm finding that's rarely the case. Yeah. So I would say that's probably the biggest change in my leadership is having that faith in people and letting them make their argument. Why do you want to do this? Give me the supporting facts. I'll ultimately make the decision, but I find most of the time I end up agreeing with them.
Yeah. How have you, I assume, you've been burned over the years maybe by somebody that didn't have your company's best interest in mind, and how do you reconcile that and kind of move forward with still kind of like putting trust in people and believing in them?
It's kind of like they tell a quarterback from a football team, you got to kind of be, or like they do in Ted Lasso, you got to be the goldfish and just forget. I think, like we were talking about with the kids, and such a small percentage are snatched by people they don't know. I also believe a very small percentage of employees don't really have your best interest at heart. So even after it happened to me, I decided to just treat it as a rarity. And it was. It ultimately turned out to be a rarity.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really
You can't internalize it, because if you do, you're going to be suspect of everyone.
Everybody,
and then no one's having any fun.
Yeah, and if I know, and I don't like to live as a skeptical person, you know. So no, I anytime that's ever happened to me, I felt like my job was not to overcorrect, because it's kind of my tendency to be like, well, if I missed that, then how do I not miss it, you know? And then and try to go, okay, what feels good for Ginger, because I am a lover of people, and I want to see the best in people. So yeah. But then also trying to go, well, discernment's placed in her life for a reason, and learning too. So I try to take a little bit with me and carry it forward. Let's talk about like resilience and leadership. Like, how did you build those muscles? Like, how do you teach others? Because I'm sure you were training your center managers too, and then now with people like the founders you're working with, like how do you feel about resilience? And
you know, I every employee that I've ever had knows that I say this all the time. You know, we all make mistakes, but just never make the same mistake twice if you can help it. And I'm big on doing an autopsy. If something really went poorly, all right, let's roll our sleeves up. What happened? And, you know, admit it. If you made a mistake, I'm the first one. If I make a mistake, I'll always tell you I made a mistake. We're never going to learn if we don't focus on what happened in that circumstance to try to prevent it from happening again.
Right.
So, you know, I think that fundamentally creates a resiliency. You know, it's in addition to the don't make the same mistake twice, I always say that I treat problems like an object. And you just put the object on the table, and we're all going to look at the object, and we're going to try to figure it out and try to take the emotion out of it. Because it's easy. I mean, I hate to bring up a current event, but you know, you look at what happened with NES during the ice storm. The easiest thing to do is sit back and start pointing fingers and, oh, you guys are terrible, and blame. I don't know enough about it to blame anybody.
Right.
You know, I do know we have a very complicated system. Maybe it could be less complicated. I don't know what would be involved in that. But my first blush response to things is not to blame people.
Right.
And I think a good leader should be that way. You know, I think that as a leader, you want to dig into whatever fundamentally caused the problem. Then you want to try to help train your people to not fall into that trap down the road. And I think you want to be that solid rock of the company that everyone knows. Anytime I go to Ginger, I'm going to get the same Ginger every time. To me, that's a leader, because
I agree.
It means the door's open. You can always come talk to me if you need to.
And that I felt like sometimes maybe I was like the duck underwater like this, but at least my employees saw the duck above the water.
Absolutely.
And I know for me that took a lot of how I handled myself outside, you know, like what I did to take care of myself. Like, and I can assume working for you, just having been around you, like you come off as like grounded and present. So like, what are practices that you have that keep you that way? And was it leadership that taught you to be that way, or have you always kind of been that way?
I've had some great bosses over the years. So yeah, there's no doubt. Some of the leaders I've worked for have helped shape me. You know, it's interesting because I was thinking about asking a question myself, which is, you know, what percentage of leadership ability is innate and what percentage can be taught?
I've wondered that a lot.
I'm becoming more and more convinced. I'm thinking it's like 75-25. Innate. I really do. And it's not to take away from anyone. I just know, I've known an awful lot of people who get thrown into leadership roles. Yeah. And you could just feel the discomfort. You can't read a book to get through that. Right. You know, there are certain things, you know, I feel like you're wired that way. I think there are just certain things that a leader needs to have in their bones. And then the rest are reading the books and learning from mentors. You know, when I look at my career, there are absolutely some bosses who immediately come to mind. I've got some teachers who also immediately come to mind that I connected with and learned from. But I think I've just kind of come to realize I'm mostly sort of wired this way. Yeah. And it's worked to my benefit.
That's really cool. Did you have a lot of responsibilities as a child, or leadership? Okay. Yeah. Because I think both my parents have a disability. So I think I was a very responsible child, and that turned into, you know, and then it looked like captain of the cheerleading squad, right? Like that's what leadership looked like at 14, you know? And so I'm like, oh, it turns out it made sense for me. But what for you when you were?
Yeah. And I don't want to lead you astray either. I was a goofball when I was a kid. I mean,
I was too.
A total goofball. Yeah. And you know, you think of everything you could do wrong. I did a lot of that. But in a way, you know, I was also the guy who would always throw my hat in the ring to be the president of this or run that. So at the same time that I was being goofy,
you were stretching those muscles.
yeah, I always kind of felt like I had something to offer. And I wake up every day, and this is absolutely true. I wake up every day feeling like I need to be doing something of value. Any day that I'm not doing something of value, I kind of question, was that a worthwhile day?
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
No, it totally does.
So I'm always kind of looking.
I think Gen Z might say that you and I are kind of toxic in that way.
Yeah, but the thing of value doesn't necessarily mean business.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I paint, I write. There are things that I do.
Yeah.
If I'm up in my studio and I'm doing some painting, that is valuable use of my time, is how I look at it.
Yeah, I love that.
So not everything is about,
Work,
getting involved in a nonprofit or running a business. But if you're just sitting there and you're not progressing in some way, you're not stretching that gray matter in your head, I feel like, oh gosh, I just wasted so much time.
Yeah.
And I don't want anyone to think that I'm running around like a whirling dervish either.
Yeah.
I don't do that. But I think a lot.
Yeah. No, I can tell from I can vouch. I haven't been around you. You're a thinker. Okay, your question that came from Savannah.
Yeah.
Let me find. Okay. How has a transition in your life outside of work changed the way that you lead or define success?
Well, I mean, the biggest transition in my life was becoming a parent. So there's no doubt. I talk about the goofy years. You could mark them as pre-baby, post-baby.
Yeah.
That's a wake-up call.
Yeah.
I remember clearly I'm in the hospital in the recovery room with my wife. It's late at night. She gave birth pretty late. And they wheel the bassinet in, and our son is in the bassinet, and he's nice and calm and quiet. Within 5 minutes, he's screaming his head off. And my wife and I are looking at each other and we're like, somebody's going to come get him.
Yeah.
And then it dawned on us in that second, it's like, nobody's coming.
Yeah.
It's us. And immediately it changes your view of the world.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you understand responsibility as a capital R. So I would say that was the biggest shift for me.
Totally.
And probably the second biggest shift was getting laid off.
Oh, yeah.
When they came through and they're letting all the top marketing people go at Fruit. And, I had to go home and absorb that and think about that. And, you talk about resiliency. And again, it happened. It was a corporate thing. It wasn't, hey, we hate Len, we're getting rid of Len. But it was a moment to really kind of reflect and think, okay, I've been answering to other people for a long time, and maybe I need to take responsibility for myself at this point. And that's really what started me on the road to owning my own business. I don't think I would have done it otherwise.
I was going to say, I was wondering if you think of that as
I don't think I would have. I think that I would have ended up, becoming a VP of sales or marketing at a bigger company. I think I ultimately could have become a CEO at a company. And that was the track that I was on. I never would have thought twice about it. I mean, you look at my life and my resume and my point of view now, it was born from that, I would say.
Totally.
More than anything. And I don't regret it.
Yeah.
I've had great experience.
I can't remember who and I was talking to the other day about how we all think. I was like, gosh, I'm going to say it, and it might have been you. We were talking about how we think there's these big moments, these big decisions, like where we go to college or something that we think is going to like change everything, but it's sometimes in a day, right? Like, losing your job is like that actually is what changed, the next 20-something years.
And you think it's the end of the world, and in a way it is the end of the world. It's the end of that world.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that it's going to be bad. It just means something major is going to change.
It's on the other side of it, yeah.
And I know that for sure, because in that moment, I went through the process of where am I going to go next? Because we were living in Nashville, and this was 2003-ish. Nashville was not what it is
right, yeah, by no means.
So it wasn't like I was going to find another job of that level in town. So we were looking at either moving back to Atlanta or Chicago or Cincinnati or something like that. And that gave me a minute to just pump the brakes. And I decided then and there, I'm going to give it about 6 months and really think through what I want to do. And I started on a different course.
That's great. That's awesome. Okay. And then lastly, just because we are on the Next Mile podcast, which is actually called In Good Company, I need to start. and you mentioned a little bit about Next Smile, but do you have like a favorite nugget, a favorite conversation, a favorite speaker that's just been impactful for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of speakers, and I'm not going to name names, but I would say that the people who tell their personal story and have gone through things I can't even imagine going through. And I mean, we've heard quite a few stories that already are significantly more involved than I could ever wrap my head around. And you see people come out the back end and how they absorb all that, you know, and it becomes part of them and makes them stronger down the road. I find that amazing.
Yeah.
And, you know, whatever you've got going on in your business life, if you can go and interact with someone who's been through something you couldn't even imagine, and they're telling you how they overcame it and got their lives turned around, you go home and look at your life and it's like, it's not too bad.
Their perspective, yeah. And I think that's probably my favorite thing too, is what we call the mile markers, because we all see other people. Sometimes we only really see the successful parts, and to me it's so inspiring to know that somebody had this thing happen, or you know, and how would we know, because they maybe didn't put that on Instagram or whatever. And so it helps me dig deep to know those things about people. When things feel hard for me, it's like, oh yeah, this actually isn't a bad day. You know, it gives you just a lot of perspective. So thanks for sharing. So where can people find you now? Like, where's the best place to find out what you're up to? Well, I know you do a good job on LinkedIn.
I
don't think a lot of people do, but you're one of those. You do good.
I have a lot of things I want to say, and it's a great avenue for that.
But it's very authentic, and it's really good.
So they can always find me at up211marketing.com. And then I also have my own personal website, which is lensilverman.com.
Okay.
That's more around the book and public speaking around that subject matter of Gen Z.
Awesome.
But those are two great places to find.
Okay. And then LinkedIn.
Yep.
Okay.
Always on LinkedIn.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me.
I love every conversation with you, and this was another good one.
Well, good luck with the podcast. I think this is great.